King's majestic brown horse leads a grand parade of hundreds of marching guards. The city slowly came alive with the hum of excitement, as the people knew that today was not an ordinary day. Today was the day of the Grand Royal Parade, an event that happened only once a year, but which everyone remembered for the rest of their lives. The streets were already filling with vendors, children, and curious visitors from nearby villages. Some carried baskets of flowers, hoping to toss them in honor of the king, while others clutched their small drums or whistles, ready to add to the cheerful noise. At the center of all this preparation stood the palace, a magnificent structure of white stone with golden rooftops that shimmered in the early sunlight. From the windows and balconies, servants were arranging flags and banners, while guards in polished armor walked briskly to check that everything was ready. There was a sense of quiet energy in the air, a mix of anticipation, pride, and joy. People whispered to one another, imagining the sight of the parade. Hundreds of guards marching in perfect lines, music echoing through the streets, and at the very front, the king's majestic brown horse, Chestnut. Chestnut was not just any horse. He was large and strong, with a coat the color of rich chocolate and a mane that shimmered like silk in the sunlight. His eyes were dark and intelligent, calm yet full of awareness, and his presence alone commanded respect. People who had seen Chestnut before often said he looked like a creature from a storybook, too perfect to be real. Today, he would play a special role, leading the parade and setting the pace for hundreds of marching guards behind him. In the stables, Chestnut moved gracefully, his hooves clopping softly against the polished wooden floor. His rider, a loyal royal aide named Marcus, adjusted the golden bridle carefully, checking each strap to make sure it was secure. Marcus had spent years caring for Chestnut, and he knew the horse better than almost anyone in the kingdom. "Steady, boy," he whispered, patting the horse's neck gently. Chestnut flicked his ears forward, responding to the calm and reassuring touch. There was a quiet bond between them, one built on trust, respect, and countless hours of training. Outside, the streets were becoming crowded. Merchants set up their stalls selling food, toys, and trinkets. The smell of fresh bread mixed with the scent of flowers, creating a festive atmosphere. Children ran around, pointing at the banners fluttering in the wind, while their parents guided them carefully, making sure no one got lost in the growing crowd. Old men and women sat on benches, their eyes sparkling with memories of past parades, while young lovers walked hand in hand, imagining the spectacle they were about to witness. As the time for the parade approached, the guards began to gather. They came from all corners of the kingdom, dressed in shining armor that reflected the early sunlight. Each guard carried a long spear or a beautifully decorated banner, and each one stood tall and proud, ready to march in perfect formation. The rhythmic sound of boots hitting the cobblestones echoed through the streets, a sound that made the people stop and look. It was a sound that promised something grand, something worth remembering. The excitement was not only in the streets. From the palace balcony, the king himself watched as the preparations unfolded. He was a tall man with a kind face and a commanding presence. Today, he would ride behind Chestnut, waving to his people as they marched through the city. Yet even he knew that the real star of the day was the horse at the very front. Chestnut had led many parades before, but each time the sight of him brought awe and admiration. As the parade line formed, Chestnut was led out of the stables. The crowd fell into a hush as the horse stepped into the sunlight, his coat shining like polished wood, muscles rippling under his sleek fur. Marcus guided him to the front, where he would take his place as the leader. Children pressed their faces against the wooden fences that separated them from the street, their eyes wide with wonder. The elderly nodded quietly, remembering how they had watched the same parade many years ago. Merchants paused their work, and even the birds seemed to quiet down, as if nature itself wanted to witness this moment. For a moment, everything was still. Chestnut lifted his head, ears twitching as if he could feel the weight of the crowd's eyes upon him. He pawed lightly at the ground, eager to begin. Marcus gave him a reassuring pat, whispering, "It's your time, old friend." Then, as the drums started to beat in the distance, Chestnut took the first steps forward. The sound of the drums was deep and steady, echoing through the city like a heartbeat. With each step, the people's excitement grew. Behind Chestnut, the guards fell into perfect formation. Their armor clinked softly, and their banners swayed with every movement. Musicians raised their instruments and began to play fanfares that were both grand and joyful. The air was filled with the sound of trumpets, drums, and the murmurs of thousands of spectators. Flowers were tossed onto the street, landing at Chestnut's hooves, and the horse stepped carefully, almost as if acknowledging the honor of the moment. As the parade began to move, the city seemed to transform. The streets, which had been busy and ordinary just minutes ago, became a stage for something extraordinary. Chestnut led the way with calm confidence, his movements smooth and precise. The guards followed, their steps in perfect rhythm, and the crowd erupted into cheers and applause. Children waved their small flags, and parents lifted their little ones onto their shoulders to give them a better view. Everyone wanted to see the brown horse that had become a symbol of majesty and tradition. Even from a distance, the parade was breathtaking. From the rooftops, people leaned forward to catch a glimpse of Chestnut and the marching guards. Birds took flight, startled by the noise, but adding to the sense of motion and life. The city seemed to pulse with energy, every corner filled with anticipation and admiration. For those watching, it was not just a parade. It was a story coming to life, a moment of pride that connected everyone to their kingdom and to each other. Chestnut continued down the street, his head held high, ears flicking back and forth as he observed the world around him. He seemed to understand the importance of his role, moving with dignity and grace. Marcus kept a steady hand on the reins, guiding him but allowing the horse to take the lead naturally. Together, they were a symbol of harmony, trust, and tradition, a reminder that greatness often comes from the quiet strength of those who lead without needing to boast. By the time they reached the main square, the excitement had reached its peak. Flags fluttered, music played, and the crowd cheered louder than ever. Chestnut stood for a moment, surveying the sea of faces, before taking a slow, deliberate step forward. The people could feel the power and elegance in every movement. Children gasped, and adults smiled, knowing that they were witnessing something special, something that would be remembered for years to come. The first part of the parade had begun, and with Chestnut leading the way, it promised to be a day of celebration, unity, and wonder. The city had come alive with anticipation, and the people's hearts were full of joy. Today, they were not just spectators. They were part of a story, one that would be told over and over about a majestic brown horse, a loyal rider, and a kingdom that came together to celebrate tradition, pride, and beauty in its purest form. As the first rays of sunlight filled the city, the streets buzzed with excitement. From every corner, guards began arriving, their polished armor reflecting the golden light and glinting with every movement. They came from distant towns, villages, and fortresses, traveling long distances to take part in the grand parade. Each one carried a spear, sword, or decorated banner, and their expressions were serious yet proud. The guards knew that this event was more than a display of strength. It was a symbol of honor, discipline, and loyalty to their king and kingdom. The streets were lined with eager citizens who had arrived hours before to secure the best spots. Children clutched the hands of their parents, craning their necks to see over the crowd. Old men and women leaned on canes or benches, their eyes shining with memories of past parades and stories they had heard from their ancestors. Merchants, having sold their goods early in the morning, paused to witness the spectacle. Even stray animals seemed to sense the excitement, quietly watching from rooftops or alleys as people crowded the streets. In the main square, the guards began to assemble into neat lines. The rhythm of their boots hitting the cobblestones created a steady, commanding beat that filled the air. It was a sound that inspired awe and demanded attention. The younger guards adjusted their armor nervously, trying to stand perfectly straight, while the older, more experienced soldiers moved with ease, their presence adding a sense of balance and calm to the formation. Every detail mattered: the angle of a sword, the way a banner fluttered, and the precise spacing between each soldier. It was a dance of discipline and precision, one that had been practiced for months, and the city was about to witness its perfection. At the center of all this preparation, Chestnut, the king's majestic brown horse, waited patiently. His large, strong body gleamed in the sunlight, and his dark eyes reflected both intelligence and calmness. Marcus, his rider and caretaker, gently ran his hands along Chestnut's mane, speaking softly to keep him steady. Marcus had trained with Chestnut for years, and he knew how to keep him focused even in the midst of a crowd. "We're ready, boy," Marcus whispered, feeling a swell of pride. Chestnut flicked his ears in acknowledgement as if he understood the importance of his role. As more guards arrived, the crowd grew even larger. People cheered and waved, trying to catch a glimpse of the soldiers as they passed by. Children pointed excitedly at the banners, each one decorated with symbols representing different regions of the kingdom. The music of trumpets and drums began to build, signaling that the parade was about to start. The city seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the moment when the guards would march in unison and Chestnut would lead the procession. The atmosphere was electric. From the palace balcony, the king observed every detail with pride. He was a tall man with a strong presence, his royal robes flowing in the gentle morning breeze. Today, he would ride behind Chestnut, greeting his people and joining in the celebration, but he knew the real star was the horse. Chestnut had led many parades before, and each time the horse brought admiration and awe from everyone who saw him. The king smiled, knowing that today would be remembered not just for the grandeur, but for the spirit of unity and tradition that Chestnut represented. The first group of guards moved forward, their boots striking the cobblestones in perfect rhythm. The sound echoed through the streets like a heartbeat, steady and strong. Each guard held his banner high, the colors bright against the morning sun. As they passed, the crowd erupted into applause and cheers. Children waved their small flags, and parents lifted them onto their shoulders to give them a better view. The music of drums and trumpets filled the air, blending with the excited voices of the spectators. Chestnut, standing tall at the front of the formation, seemed to understand the energy around him. He moved gracefully, his hooves striking the ground with a calm and confident rhythm. Marcus guided him gently, keeping him steady while allowing him to lead naturally. The horse's large eyes scanned the crowd, taking in the faces of thousands of people who had gathered to witness this moment. He was not just a horse. He was a symbol of pride, strength, and unity for the entire kingdom. As the parade continued, the guards followed Chestnut in perfect formation. Their movements were synchronized, each step timed to the beat of the drums. The banners fluttered in the wind, telling stories of the kingdom's history, victories, and traditions. People cheered louder as the formation passed, throwing flowers and small gifts onto the street. Chestnut stepped carefully, almost as if acknowledging the honor and respect being shown to him. Every eye in the city was focused on the majestic brown horse leading hundreds of soldiers, a sight that filled hearts with pride and joy. For the young guards, it was both a challenge and a thrill. They had trained for months to perfect their timing, posture, and movements. Today, they were part of something larger than themselves, representing the strength and honor of their families, towns, and regions. Older guards offered guidance, ensuring that the younger ones maintained the correct formation. Together, they created a rhythm, a living display of coordination, discipline, and teamwork that amazed the onlookers. The streets became a river of color, sound, and movement. Red, blue, and gold banners waved in the breeze. The music of drums and trumpets rose and fell in harmony with the marching guards. Children ran along the sides, waving small flags and shouting with excitement. Parents clapped and cheered, their faces glowing with pride. Even the city's animals seemed to feel the special energy of the day, quietly watching from rooftops or alleys as the parade moved past. Every detail mattered. The alignment of the guards, the tilt of a banner, the position of a spear, all were carefully monitored by the commanders overseeing the parade. They walked along the sides, making small adjustments and giving gentle instructions to maintain perfection. The city itself seemed to come alive, the cobblestones shining, windows open, and rooftops filled with spectators. The parade was not just a display. It was a living, breathing celebration of unity, discipline, and pride in the kingdom. As Chestnut continued to lead, he remained calm and focused despite the noise and excitement. Children pointed and gasped at the sight of the horse, and adults nodded quietly, impressed by his elegance and strength. Marcus felt a deep sense of pride as he guided Chestnut, knowing that their bond and training had prepared them for this moment. The horse moved steadily, leading the formation with authority yet grace, a reminder to all that true strength comes from confidence, preparation, and calm control. The parade slowly approached the main square, where the largest crowd had gathered. People filled every available space, standing shoulder to shoulder, eager to witness the culmination of this grand event. The sound of cheering grew louder, blending with the music and the rhythmic beat of boots striking cobblestones. The sight of Chestnut at the front, followed by hundreds of disciplined guards, was breathtaking. It was a moment that seemed larger than life, a perfect combination of tradition, beauty, and human and animal coordination. For the spectators, it was a day to remember. Children would talk about it for weeks, retelling the story of the magnificent brown horse and the disciplined soldiers who followed him. Adults would remember the pride they felt, the sense of unity, and the joy of being part of a kingdom that valued tradition and honor. Even the older generation, who had seen many parades before, nodded with approval, recognizing the effort, dedication, and spirit that had gone into creating this extraordinary event. As the first part of the parade concluded, the atmosphere was filled with excitement for what was still to come. Chestnut had led the way with calm confidence, guiding the guards through the streets and setting the tone for the entire event. The city was alive with pride, joy, and admiration, and the people knew that they were witnessing something truly special. Today was more than a parade. It was a celebration of unity, discipline, and the enduring bond between humans and animals, all symbolized by the majestic brown horse that led hundreds of guards through the heart of the kingdom. The city streets were alive with color and movement. As the parade continued, stretching farther than the eye could see, Chestnut, the king's majestic brown horse, led the formation with calm authority, his hooves striking the cobblestones in a steady rhythm that matched the drumbeats of the guards behind him. The crowd followed his every move with awe, as if the horse's very presence demanded respect. Children pressed forward against the railings, their eyes wide with wonder, pointing excitedly at the gleaming armor of the guards and the shimmering banners fluttering in the morning breeze. Behind Chestnut, the rows of soldiers marched in perfect formation. Each movement was synchronized, each step timed to the beat of the drums. Their polished armor reflected sunlight, creating flashes of silver and gold that dazzled the spectators. The soldiers carried banners decorated with symbols representing their towns and villages, telling stories of the kingdom's history through bright colors and detailed designs. Families watched with pride, recognizing the familiar emblems of their home regions, and cheered loudly, waving small flags in response. Musicians walked beside the guards, their instruments filling the air with triumphant music. The trumpets rang out with clear, bold notes, while the drums added a deep, steady rhythm that made every step of the parade feel like a heartbeat. The sound reverberated through the streets, bouncing off the tall buildings and echoing into the distance. Even the wind seemed to join in, rustling flags and banners, adding a gentle accompaniment to the music. It was not only a display of discipline and strength, but also a feast for the senses, a perfect blend of sight and sound that captured the spirit of the kingdom. Chestnut moved gracefully at the front, his large muscles rippling under his smooth, brown coat. Marcus, his rider, kept a steady hand on the reins, guiding the horse gently while allowing him to lead naturally. The horse's dark eyes scanned the crowd, taking in every movement and sound. Despite the noise, the cheering, and the bustling energy, Chestnut remained calm and focused. He seemed to understand the importance of his role and carried himself with the dignity of a true leader. Children pointed at him and whispered excitedly to their parents, while adults nodded in admiration, impressed by his elegance and strength. The parade moved down the main street, which had been lined with rows of spectators since early morning. The buildings on either side were decorated with flags and flowers, their balconies filled with people who wanted the best view of the procession. Some had climbed onto rooftops, while others leaned out of windows, waving to the guards below. The streets were filled with laughter, cheers, and the occasional cry of excitement from children who had never seen anything so grand. Vendors paused in their work to watch, holding trays of food and small gifts, their faces lit with awe and admiration. Every step of the parade was carefully choreographed. The guards kept their distance, their formation perfect and unwavering while the banners fluttered in the wind. The rhythm of their boots hitting the cobblestones was almost hypnotic, a sound that seemed to echo the heartbeat of the kingdom itself. Marcus felt the pride swell in his chest as he rode Chestnut, knowing that the horse's calm and steady movements set the tone for the entire procession. Together, they led hundreds of guards through the city, creating a sense of unity and harmony that filled everyone with admiration. The crowd's excitement grew as the parade approached the city square. This was the heart of the celebration, the place where the largest number of spectators had gathered. Children clutched their parents' hands tightly, shouting and pointing at the horse and the guards. The square was filled with the bright colors of banners, the shining armor of the soldiers, and the joyful expressions of the people. Musicians played louder and faster, their music adding energy and drama to the scene. The sound of trumpets, drums, and cheering blended into a symphony of celebration that filled the entire city. As they reached the square, Chestnut paused for a moment, standing tall and proud at the front of the formation. The crowd erupted into applause and cheers, throwing flowers and small trinkets onto the street. The horse stepped carefully among them, his hooves avoiding the offerings with careful precision. Marcus patted his neck gently, whispering words of encouragement. "Well done, old friend," he said softly. Chestnut flicked his ears forward, sensing the approval and admiration of the crowd. This brief pause allowed everyone to take in the full sight of the parade, the magnificence of the horse, and the perfection of the guards' formation. The guards continued to march through the square, moving with steady precision. The younger soldiers had grown more confident, their nervous energy replaced by determination and pride. Older guards watched carefully, offering small corrections and encouragement. Each banner, each spear, each piece of armor was part of a larger story, a story of dedication, teamwork, and honor. The citizens of the kingdom recognized this and cheered even louder, their applause echoing through the square and surrounding streets. Chestnut remained calm throughout the parade, his movements smooth and controlled. He seemed almost aware of the significance of the moment, as if he understood that he was not only leading a parade, but also representing the kingdom's history, pride, and unity. Marcus felt a deep sense of connection with the horse, knowing that their bond had been built over years of training and trust. Together, they symbolized the perfect harmony between human and animal, a relationship based on respect, understanding, and loyalty. As the parade moved on, the streets became a river of colors and sounds. Flags of red, blue, gold, and green waved in the breeze, and the gleaming armor of the guards caught the sunlight, creating a dazzling display. The musicians played with energy and skill, their notes rising and falling in perfect harmony with the marching soldiers. Children ran along the sides of the street, waving their small flags and shouting with excitement. Parents lifted them onto their shoulders, giving them a better view and sharing in their wonder. The city itself seemed to celebrate, the cobblestones shining, the buildings adorned with flowers, and the air filled with joy. Every detail of the parade was important. The alignment of the guards, the tilt of a banner, the timing of the music, all of it contributed to a seamless display of coordination and discipline. The commanders walked alongside the formation, making small adjustments and giving gentle instructions to ensure perfection. Even a small mistake could disrupt the rhythm, but the soldiers were trained to respond quickly, maintaining the flow of the parade with skill and precision. As the parade continued, the citizens felt a sense of unity and pride. Families cheered for the soldiers from their towns and villages, recognizing the banners and symbols that represented their homes. Children were filled with awe, inspired by the strength and beauty of the guards and the majestic brown horse at the front. The older generation nodded with approval, remembering the dedication and discipline that had gone into preparing for this event. Everyone, young and old, felt part of something larger than themselves, connected through tradition, pride, and celebration. The sun climbed higher in the sky, casting a warm glow over the city. Chestnut continued to lead the guards with calm authority, his movements smooth and precise. Marcus felt the pride and joy of the crowd as they cheered and waved, and he patted the horse gently, whispering words of encouragement. The bond between rider and horse was evident to all who watched, a silent testament to years of trust, training, and mutual respect. The parade moved onward, winding through the streets of the city, each corner revealing new crowds and new expressions of excitement. The guards maintained their formation perfectly, the banners fluttered in the breeze, and the musicians played with skill and energy. The people cheered loudly, throwing flowers and small gifts onto the street, while children pointed and shouted with joy. Chestnut stepped carefully, avoiding the offerings, and Marcus guided him gently, keeping him focused and calm. By the time the parade reached the edge of the square, the excitement had reached a peak. The citizens of the kingdom had witnessed a display of discipline, unity, and beauty that they would remember for years. Chestnut had led the way with calm confidence. The guards had marched in perfect formation, and the city had come alive with pride, joy, and admiration. The parade was more than just a spectacle. It was a celebration of the kingdom's history, tradition, and the bond between its people and their leaders. As the first half of the parade concluded, the crowd erupted into applause, cheering for the guards and for Chestnut, the majestic brown horse who had led them with dignity and grace. Children waved their flags, parents smiled proudly, and the older generation nodded in approval. Everyone had witnessed something extraordinary, a moment of beauty, discipline, and unity that would be remembered for generations. The parade had been moving through the city for hours, and the energy in the streets remained high. Chestnut, the king's majestic brown horse, continued to lead with calm authority, his hooves striking the cobblestones in a steady rhythm. Behind him, the guards maintained perfect formation, their polished armor gleaming in the sunlight. The citizens cheered, waved flags, and tossed flowers, creating an atmosphere filled with joy and celebration. However, even in the midst of this grand spectacle, small challenges began to emerge, testing the discipline of the soldiers and the calm of Chestnut. As the procession turned a corner into a narrower street, a sudden gust of wind swept through the square. It was stronger than usual, carrying with it leaves, dust, and even some of the lighter banners. One of the ceremonial flags, held high by a young guard, was caught by the wind and toppled sideways. The guard struggled to keep it upright, and for a moment the carefully maintained formation wavered. Gasps rippled through the crowd, and a few people shouted, concerned that the parade might be disrupted. Marcus felt Chestnut tense slightly beneath him, sensing the uncertainty in the guard's movements. "Steady, boy," Marcus whispered, patting the horse's neck. Chestnut flicked his ears forward, responding to the calm voice. The horse remained poised, his steps measured and confident. Seeing Chestnut maintain his composure had a calming effect on the guards around him. The older soldiers quickly adjusted, guiding the younger ones back into alignment. Slowly, the formation regained its rhythm, and the parade continued forward, uninterrupted. It was a small test, but it reminded everyone present that even in a celebration, discipline and focus were essential. The guards pressed on, stepping carefully around fallen flowers and other small objects that had landed on the street. Each soldier kept his head high, eyes forward, and arms steady. The younger soldiers, though shaken by the sudden gust, began to find their rhythm again. Their nerves were replaced by determination, inspired by the steady presence of their leaders and by the calm authority of Chestnut at the front. The crowd, sensing the soldiers' resilience, cheered even louder, their applause blending with the music of drums and trumpets. As the parade reached the city's central square, another challenge arose. A section of the cobblestone street had been recently repaired, and a few uneven stones caused a minor disruption in the guards' march. The younger soldiers stumbled slightly, their boots catching on the uneven surface. For a moment the rhythm faltered, and Marcus felt a twinge of concern. But Chestnut, as if aware of the situation, stepped carefully, his strong legs and balanced gait guiding the formation past the uneven stones. The crowd watched in admiration as the horse led with poise, turning a potential problem into a display of elegance and control. Nearby, the musicians adjusted their tempo, subtly slowing the drumbeat to allow the guards to regain their perfect alignment. The trumpets played a steady, encouraging melody, blending seamlessly with the rhythm of Chestnut's hooves. The soldiers responded quickly, their movements synchronized once again. The parade flowed through the square with renewed energy, and the citizens cheered, inspired by the display of teamwork, discipline, and resilience. It was a reminder that challenges were not setbacks, but opportunities to demonstrate strength and unity. As the formation moved onward, the crowd noticed the interaction between Marcus and Chestnut. The horse's calm demeanor, guided by Marcus's gentle commands, seemed to reassure the guards and the spectators alike. Children pointed excitedly, whispering to their parents about how amazing it was that the horse remained so composed despite the sudden gust and uneven stones. Parents nodded, explaining that Chestnut was not only a beautiful and strong horse, but also a symbol of patience, leadership, and trust. The bond between Marcus and Chestnut had become visible to everyone, a silent lesson in courage and responsibility. The parade continued along the streets, moving through neighborhoods where people had decorated their homes with flowers, ribbons, and banners. The rhythm of the guards' steps, the music, and the cheering created a lively, festive atmosphere. Street vendors paused their work to watch, and children ran along the edges, waving small flags. Chestnut's steady gait guided the formation smoothly, even as the streets became more crowded and narrow. The horse moved confidently, navigating obstacles and keeping the guards in line, proving that preparation, trust, and calmness could overcome any difficulty. Despite the small challenges, the energy of the parade never waned. The citizens' pride in their kingdom and admiration for the disciplined soldiers and the majestic horse grew with every step. Families clapped and cheered, their faces glowing with joy, while the younger generation watched in awe. The city's older residents, who had seen many parades over the years, nodded in quiet approval, recognizing the care and dedication that had gone into preparing this grand event. Every participant, from Chestnut to the youngest guard, contributed to the success of the parade, creating a shared experience that connected everyone present. As the procession approached another open square, a minor obstacle appeared. A small group of children, curious and excited, had wandered too close to the parade route. Their parents rushed forward, calling to them, but the guards had to adjust their steps slightly to maintain safety. Marcus guided Chestnut carefully, ensuring that the horse remained calm and avoided any sudden movements. The soldiers gently corrected their spacing, and the parade continued without incident. The crowd applauded, recognizing the quick thinking and composure of the participants. It was another reminder that even amidst joy and celebration, awareness and care were always important. The midday sun began to warm the city, but the guards marched steadily, their formation unbroken, and Chestnut led with the same calm authority he had shown since the beginning. The rhythm of boots, the fluttering of banners, and the music of drums and trumpets created a sense of continuity and order that captivated the audience. Every obstacle, whether it was a gust of wind, uneven stones, or curious children, became part of the story of the parade, a story of resilience, teamwork, and the quiet strength of leadership. Marcus patted Chestnut's neck as they passed the largest crowd yet, whispering words of encouragement. The horse flicked his ears and continued forward, his movements precise and elegant. Behind him, the guards mirrored his calm determination, their steps synchronized, their banners held high, and their armor shining brilliantly in the sunlight. The citizens cheered, flowers rained down onto the streets, and the musicians played with renewed energy. The parade had overcome its small challenges, and the display of discipline and unity inspired everyone who watched. As the procession moved toward the palace, the final leg of the parade approached. The streets became narrower and more crowded, but Chestnut remained composed, guiding the formation with skill and patience. The soldiers adjusted their spacing, following the example of their leaders, and the music rose in a triumphant crescendo. The city's citizens, aware of the parade's nearing conclusion, shouted, clapped, and waved, their faces filled with joy and pride. Children danced along the edges of the streets, while adults and elders nodded in approval, recognizing the effort, dedication, and discipline that had brought this celebration to life. When the parade finally reached the palace square, Chestnut paused at the front, standing tall and majestic as the citizens erupted into applause. Marcus patted the horse gently, whispering, "You did it, old friend." The guards lined up in perfect formation behind him, banners fluttering and armor gleaming in the sunlight. The music of trumpets and drums filled the air, blending with the cheers of the crowd. Every obstacle, every small challenge had been met with patience, discipline, and teamwork, making the parade even more impressive than before. The city's citizens knew they had witnessed something extraordinary. Chestnut, the king's majestic brown horse, had led hundreds of guards through challenges with calm authority, and the soldiers had maintained perfect discipline throughout. Children would talk about this day for weeks, telling stories of the brave guards, the strong and intelligent horse, and the excitement of the parade. Adults would remember the pride and unity they felt, while the older generation nodded in quiet approval, satisfied that tradition and excellence had once again been displayed. The parade had become more than just a display. It had become a story of resilience, teamwork, and courage. Every participant had played a role, from Chestnut and Marcus to the youngest guards and musicians, creating a perfect blend of discipline, beauty, and celebration. For the citizens of the kingdom, It was a reminder that challenges could be overcome with patience, preparation, and trust. The majestic brown horse had led not just the parade, but also the hearts and minds of everyone who watched, leaving a lasting impression of unity, pride, and grace. The parade had finally reached its final destination, the Grand Palace Square, where the king and his family stood, waiting to welcome the procession. The city was filled with an electric mixture of excitement, relief, and admiration. Citizens lined every street and balcony, shouting, cheering, and waving flags as the majestic brown horse, Chestnut, led the guards into the square with calm authority. The drums and trumpets played in perfect harmony, marking the culmination of a day full of color, music, and celebration. Chestnut stopped at the center of the square, his strong legs planted firmly on the cobblestones, his head held high, and his dark eyes scanning the crowd. The sunlight reflected off his shiny coat, making him look almost golden, and his mane danced lightly in the gentle breeze. Marcus patted his neck, whispering softly, "You did it, old friend. You led them all perfectly." The horse flicked his ears, acknowledging the praise, and the crowd erupted into applause. Children jumped up and down with joy, while adults clapped enthusiastically, and elders smiled proudly, recognizing the skill, patience, and discipline that had brought the parade to a perfect conclusion. The king stepped forward, his royal robes flowing elegantly as he walked toward Chestnut. He extended his hand to Marcus, thanking him for his dedication and careful guidance. Then, with a gentle touch, he patted Chestnut's neck, showing respect for the majestic horse that had led hundreds of guards through the streets with such grace and calm authority. The crowd cheered even louder, celebrating not only the king but also the horse and the entire parade. It was a moment of pride, unity, and joy for everyone in the kingdom. Behind Chestnut, the guards formed a perfect line, their armor gleaming, banners held high, and faces showing pride and satisfaction. Even the youngest soldiers, who had been nervous at the start of the parade, now walked confidently, inspired by the steady example of their leaders and the calm presence of the horse at the front. The musicians played one final triumphant melody, filling the square with music that seemed to echo the heartbeat of the city itself. The citizens clapped, cheered, and waved, their voices combining with the instruments to create a celebration that would be remembered for years. As the parade concluded, the people's admiration for Chestnut became clear. Children whispered excitedly to their parents about how magnificent the horse was, describing his shining coat, strong legs, and calm, wise eyes. Adults nodded in agreement, pointing out the horse's perfect posture and steady movements. Even the older generation, who had seen countless parades over the years, looked on with respect and amazement, acknowledging that Chestnut had truly led the parade with unmatched elegance and authority. The city square, which had been filled with energy and motion throughout the parade, now settled into a scene of joyful reflection. Flowers that had been thrown during the procession covered the cobblestones, creating a colorful carpet of petals. Children picked up a few to keep as souvenirs, while parents took photographs and pointed out different parts of the parade that had impressed them the most. Musicians rested briefly, smiling at the applause and admiration of the crowd. Guards lowered their banners but continued to stand tall, proud of their performance and the discipline they had shown. The king addressed the crowd from the palace balcony, his voice carrying across the square. He praised the dedication of the guards, the skill of the musicians, and the courage and calmness of Chestnut. The citizens listened with rapt attention, cheering every time he mentioned the horse or any of the soldiers by name. It was clear that this parade was more than just a tradition. It was a celebration of unity, pride, and the enduring bond between the kingdom's people and their leaders. As the speech concluded, the crowd erupted into a final round of applause and cheers. Chestnut stood proudly at the center, ears flicking as he looked out at the sea of smiling faces. Marcus patted his neck, whispering words of praise and gratitude. "You have brought them all together, boy," he said softly. "They will remember this day because of you." The horse seemed to understand, his movements calm and deliberate, as if acknowledging the honor and responsibility he had carried so gracefully. Families slowly began to leave the square, taking with them memories that would last a lifetime. Children talked excitedly about what they had seen, sharing stories with their friends and siblings about the guards, the music, and especially the magnificent brown horse. Parents smiled, knowing that they had witnessed a truly special event, one that had united the city and filled their hearts with pride. Elders lingered, reflecting on the parade's elegance and discipline, satisfied that the tradition had been maintained with such care and precision. The soldiers began to disperse in an orderly fashion, returning to their barracks, but their sense of accomplishment remained. The younger guards, who had been nervous or uncertain at the start of the parade, now walked with confidence, inspired by the teamwork, discipline, and leadership they had experienced. The older guards, proud of the younger generation's performance, exchanged nods and smiles, knowing that the kingdom's traditions were in capable hands. Chestnut, still calm and majestic, walked with Marcus back toward the stables, his hooves making soft, steady sounds on the cobblestones. The palace staff had prepared a special area for Chestnut and Marcus, recognizing the importance of the horse in leading the parade. Water and fresh hay were provided, and Marcus carefully removed the bridle, checking that everything was in place and that the horse was comfortable. Chestnut shook his mane, flicked his ears, and then rested his head slightly, showing signs of contentment and satisfaction. The bond between horse and rider had been tested and proven, and now both could enjoy a moment of well-earned rest after a day of triumph and pride. As the sun began to set, casting a warm orange glow over the city, the citizens continued to talk about the parade. Stories of the disciplined guards, the music, and the elegant horse filled the streets and homes. Children played, pretending to march and carry banners, imagining themselves as part of the grand procession. Adults shared their own memories of past parades, comparing them to the events of the day. The sense of unity and pride created by the parade lingered long after it had ended, leaving everyone with a shared experience that connected them to their city, their kingdom, and each other. That evening, as the city quieted and the last echoes of music faded, Marcus sat near Chestnut in the stables, brushing his coat and checking his hooves. He whispered softly, "You did it today, boy. You led them all, and you did it perfectly." Chestnut nudged Marcus gently with his nose, his calm eyes reflecting a quiet understanding. The horse had been the leader, the symbol, and the steady presence that had guided hundreds of guards through the challenges of the parade. Now, in the calm of the evening, there was a sense of fulfillment and pride that both horse and rider shared quietly together. The parade would be remembered for years to come. Citizens would tell stories about the day. The majestic brown horse led hundreds of guards through the streets with grace, calmness, and authority. Children would grow up imagining themselves part of such a spectacle, inspired by the courage, discipline, and unity they had witnessed. The guards would carry memories of teamwork, pride, and the lessons learned from the day's challenges. And Chestnut, the hero of the parade, would continue to stand as a symbol of excellence, patience, and strength for all who saw him. In the hearts of the kingdom's people, the parade was more than just a celebration. It was a reminder of what could be achieved through trust, dedication, and unity. The citizens returned to their homes that evening filled with joy, inspiration, and pride. They knew that the memory of the parade, and especially the sight of the magnificent brown horse leading hundreds of guards, would stay with them for a lifetime. It was a story that would be told again and again, a story of courage, discipline, and the quiet strength of a majestic creature who had become the heart of a kingdom's celebration. As night fell and the city quieted, the palace glowed softly under the moonlight. Chestnut rested comfortably in his stall, Marcus seated nearby, brushing his mane with care. The day had been long, challenging, and extraordinary, and now it was over, leaving behind a legacy of pride, unity, and inspiration. The kingdom had witnessed not just a parade, but a story of resilience, elegance, and harmony. And as everyone drifted off to sleep, the memory of the majestic brown horse leading hundreds of guards remained vivid, a symbol of the kingdom's beauty, strength, and heart.